Welcome, Ember Igniters. This is the podcast that sets your soul ablaze. I'm Fran Melfer here with Jenna Wilmers, and we are your Ember Igniters. Did you know that God gives every one of us unique gifts or talents, and sometimes we refer to that as our passion.
Mm-hmm.
And He intends for us to really use those for what we refer to as the God-given life assignment. Well, interestingly enough, a lot of people talk about a life assignment, but what we're really talking about is what we call the signal fire. And what I want you to know is that signal fire is your life. So if you're wanting to know more about how to pursue your signal fire, we ask you to come and check out our website for more information. So part of what we're talking about today is that we have things in life that just kind of happen to us as a result of our culture or what we've been trained to think of, right, Jenna?
Yeah.
It's one of those places where you think like, okay, you know, you're born, you go to school, you go to high school, you graduate, off to college you go. Once you're through college, maybe you'll settle down, get a job, because after all, you went through that process of getting that degree. And then maybe after a while of having a job, you go into marriage and kids, and we're all working towards retirement. I remember I was feeling that way. And then sometimes for us, we go into grandchildren. Well, what if I told you that the Lord has placed unique skills and talents inside of you that when aligned with God's will, can just really sort of catapult you into what we love to call 100% abundant and joyful life? Who doesn't want that?
I mean, I know I do.
Right? I do too.
But it's kind of cool because like an endowment or a gift, like in the Greek, it says that it's a gift of divine grace or spiritual endowment. And so that's kind of cool because it's placed in all of us. And really, like in the English dictionary, we call it charisma.
Ooh, I like that.
So you know how there's people that just have that magnetic personality and whatnot, but in the Christian context, it kind of referred to it as the gift or power bestowed upon someone by the Holy Spirit for the use of the church.
Well, don't you just love that when you meet somebody and you say to them, they're just so gifted, it's natural. Some people just don't need lessons to play the piano. I'm not one of those, but I do love the fact that what we say is we all have charisma. Mm-hmm. I know that I used to sit back and sometimes think about, you know, what that person has so much more charisma than me. But when you think about the definition that Jenna just shared, we all have it. Isn't that exciting? I mean, I've got it, you've got it. And so this is one of the things, too, that the Bible talks about. Paul's really good at helping us understand things. And so he's writing a letter to the Corinthians, and he says, but each of you has your own gift from God. One has the gift of maybe being something like an apostle, and others have something different. Well, you notice that Paul says, each of you, not just some, but each one of us has a unique gift. So maybe you don't believe this about yourself. I know I didn't really think, I always compared like, oh, I wish I could sing like that person. Or
I think some people, in the comparison role, they also almost, it's a little bit of jealousy too.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that too, but it is. You want to be something different than you are.
Right. And unfortunately, when you want to be something else different than what you are, you're not being authentic. And
that's right.
God put you on here because on earth, you know, you have a mission, you have a life assignment. And if you want to be somebody else or something else, you're not following what He has laid out for you.
Well, you miss all the wonderful opportunities of having a life that is active. That's what we're going to talk about, you know, really active in the giftings that you have. And when you're acting in the gifts that you have, there's a sense of just being sort of free-formed. So we're going to go over a couple of ways in which we've learned we were actually activating some gifts, but we didn't maybe know it. And one of those is Imagination. When we first kind of went through this process, we talked about, what our lives were like. And I remember when I was little, I used my imagination all the time. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you did too.
Yeah.
So I remember we had a field in the back of our house and it had tall, really tall grass. And so we would go out in that tall grass and we would imagine that we could build a house by doing what maybe you think are crop circles, flatten the grass and just get it. So we would pat it all down and we'd say, here's the kitchen, little hallway goes off, here's another room, and that would be the living room. So imagination is good. I had a lot of those kind of experiences in my life. How about you?
Yeah, I always wanted to be a marine biologist. And because my mom had this video when I was younger that I probably wore out. And it was about SeaWorld and the dolphin trainers on there. And I was just so mesmerized by this video and watching them and watching the dolphins and all of that. And so through that, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a marine biologist. And I aspired to it. And I remember telling my family like multiple times as well that, oh yeah, that's what I'm going to be. And then the older I got, I found out that you have to go to school for 7 years afterwards.
Long time.
And so when I found that out, I was like, no way, I'm not doing that. Lo and behold, I was still in college for 7 years anyways. So I could have done that, but it wasn't the plan that the Lord had for me, obviously. So I went the path that he showed me. But I really love how Steve Harvey once said that everything that we have came from someone's imagination. So if you think about it, a long, long time ago, I shouldn't say that. It's really, it's really closer than, right? It's not that long ago. We used to be attached to the wall with a phone.
Yes,
in order to talk
remember those days.
to people. And someone imagined not being chained to that wall.
Yeah.
So now we have cell phones. I mean, it went to the cordless phone and then to cell phones so that we could take, the bag phone, right?
That's
the bag phone came first.
Right.
And then we moved into cell phones. And so when I was listening to this clip where he was saying this, it really just made me start thinking like, well, what else? Like, really, is this really true? And so I'm at the gym a little bit later after hearing this, and I was on the treadmill, and I was like, oh, yeah. Someone made the treadmill because they didn't want to run outside in the wintertime in Michigan because it's brutal.
Cold here.
It's very cold, for sure. So I just thought that was a really kind of unique thing about putting two and two together, about using your imagination and how important it is in order to discover what God has for you.
Yeah, and again, I think when you describe that, someone thought, "Wow, I don't want to, keep having this cord." They really had a gift of imagination that they were using. See, we can imagine a lot of things that might not be where we're supposed to go, but once you tap into that, a great imagination of yours, anything is possible.
Well, I think when you allow yourself to imagine and let yourself go a little bit, that is the time when the Lord will speak to you and share things with you. Not that everybody really wants to know this, but that tends to happen to me in the shower. I call them shower thoughts because I'm thinking about what he wants for me and what he wants me to do for that day. And he will spark ideas in the shower. And so I'm like, then I have to repeat them to myself so that I can remember what they are.
Exactly.
To write them down when I get out. But he'll speak to you. If you use your imagination, he will use that opportunity to speak to you and share with you things that I never would have come up with on my own, obviously.
Really, and here's the really fun thing that we're learning, and we're going to probably expand upon later sometime, is that imagination is not just pretending.
You're right.
Imagination starts in the mind, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It starts there. But pretend is when you act on it, and so then it's a little different. So we'll talk more about that in some other episode, but I want you to think about that. It's not just pretending. You're not just trying to escape your life in any kind of way.
Right.
What you're doing is what Jenna just said, tapping in. Isn't that great? Getting that source and that power that you have.
Well, it all comes from him.
That's right. That's right. And so, one of the other things that we can do to activate the things that are within us, and this may sound a little different to you, but I'm going to ask, are you kind of willing to invest in yourself? And if so, what does that look like? I remember thinking investing in myself was a selfish thing, that it should just come naturally. It should just happen.
I think our society kind of is pushing that, though, a little bit, where they say, well, you should relax and you should take care of yourself. But then when you do, they turn it around and again are like, oh, you're being selfish. And it's like, well, which is it? Like, make a decision here.
Yeah, yeah. And so we want to encourage you to see that as investing in yourself. It's something for the future. When I was first started a job, it was back in the day when computers were relatively new. I know it's hard for some of you to believe that, but there were software programs that you could add into, and it didn't have these wonderful suites like we have with Microsoft or Google platforms or anything. It was just every independent sort of thing. And I remember that one of the roles they had given to me was that I needed to help them keep tabs on all of the people that they had touch points with. Well, they had a software program, but nobody knew how to use it. So what I did was I know here's another really old thing that happened back in the day. I purchased the tutorial of, I think it was a video, VHS or something like that. And I spent personal time away from the job, learning this program so that I could get back into work and utilize that particular thing that would make me successful in the role that I had. So I took the time and I spent some money to invest in something that I was going to use much further into my life, as you all know, because computers expanded. I mean, just grew from there, and you had to know how to operate them. So,
sure.
Yeah, that's one thing you can do for yourself.
Well, right. And part of activating yourself as well is, I can remember a time when I was sitting with a girlfriend at a pool and she was talking about wanting to start her modeling career. And at that time, my husband was living in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I was living in Michigan because of jobs. It wasn't because we planned that. And so during that time, I'm like, well, what could I do in order to leave my job in Michigan and go be in Tennessee with him? And so I came up with, well, what do I like to do? Well, I like to take pictures. So I was talking to her about that and saying I want to do something so that we can be back in the same city together because it was very hard. And she's like, well, why don't you take my pictures? I can build my portfolio for modeling and you can build your portfolio for photography.
A win-win.
Right. And so I was like, great, that's a great idea. Well, as we're sitting there talking, this dude comes up to us in the pool and he's like, hey, I know this is like really weird and I'm sorry. He's like, I wasn't eavesdropping, but we're like the only 4 people at the pool. So, but he's like, I hear that you are going into photography, you're going into modeling. He's like, I build websites.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, cool. I'm going to need a website. So that led to a friendship that I'm still friends with him today, actually. And he, in turn, taught me how to build websites and to update them and things like that, which now has led to me being able to build our ministry website and to produce this video podcast that you're watching right now. And I had no idea at the time.
That's right.
That God was building me up and me saying yes to activating myself to move to the next step and the next level was going to end up here. That was not even on my radar at all.
Well, that's really interesting. It's true. Some things happen to us that we can't imagine how we're going to use it in the future. And then we're surprised later on that is true. But one of the things to do that is you kind of have to make a decision to go where you can gain the knowledge. So it's like actively pursuing.
Yes.
That's your story did that. My story did that. So it can help you to accomplish whatever the dreams or the goals that you have, and that imagination that we talked
Right.
about. You start actively using your imagination and then pursue the things that God has placed into your imagination. And John Maxwell has this wonderful law. He does a lot of his books are about different laws or principles. Maybe that's another way for some of you to think of it. And he has one called the law of intentionality. And I love what he says about it. I was recently very blessed to be at one of his conferences. And so I heard him speak, and he says, growth doesn't just happen. He says it's much better if you plan your growth intentionally. You know, you have to decide where or what you need, and then you have to want to grow that. So basically, he's saying you choose, and you will learn, and then you will follow through with discipline, and it's going to be going to the very pace that you want. So it's not somebody pushing you. It's really you outlining your future with God, who has initiated within you the imagination and the way in which to move. And I think that's really exciting.
It is.
Yeah. So get out there and have a great time finding things that will, maybe today things like nothing that you would want to do, but you never know. I love that it sparked, you were just having a conversation. Mm-hmm. And out of that came a whole area, and I just want to say, we don't talk about each other very often, but Jenna is truly a gift to me and this ministry, and the skill sets that God has put into her life. And when she said it enabled her to come into this ministry with skills I didn't have. And we're using them. And I hope you're seeing that God can do the same thing with you.
But I also want to point out that yes, I came into the ministry with those skills, but it also enables me to teach somebody, and she is learning. And that's one of the coolest things I've ever seen, is because the older generation sometimes does not want to learn. I mean, we actually went to a workshop last week, and there was an older lady there that, she said she was having trouble with using Zoom. And I was like, oh, I would totally help you learn how to do that and help you with that. And she kind of just wrote me off a little bit. So if you're unwilling to learn, you're going to limit yourself, and not only yourself, but you're going to limit God, because God needs you to learn what he has in that season for you.
That's right.
In order to take you to the next level. What if I would have never have purchased the camera and learned how to use it, or decided, oh, I'm going to make a movie? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think my first movie was a slideshow of a wedding that I shot, kind of just playing around with it to see what I could do. And I remember being so proud of it. And now I look back and I probably would cringe, but you get better as you go on.
I like that point, because Nike has a really great tagline, if you really think about it, and can apply to so many things. Mm-hmm. But it's that place that finally you have to get in your mind that says, just do it. Whether you're great at it or not, the process will continue to improve you and improve you. So that's part of investing in yourself, is just do it. Just find the thing and do it.
Well, and one of our mentors told us just recently, where he said, I'm proud of you guys for being willing to suck at it first. And I was kind of like, what? But I look back on it, and it's true. Your first time is never going to be the best time. I also remember when we first started learning about podcasting.
Yeah.
And they all kept saying, just start. And we're like, well, we're not ready. And then one day we're like, okay, we're going to start. Well, then they were like, well, when you start, just know you're going to look back and the first one's going to be terrible. And we were kind of like, yeah, okay. And we did it. And we were like, yeah, we're going to throw it out there. And of course we look back and we're like, oh, but it's true with everything you do. Look back to the first time that you ever done something.
That's right.
It probably wasn't great, but you got better at it. It's just like riding a bike. You couldn't ride the bike at first, but now you can. So it's everything in your life is like that. And, maybe you learned how to ride a little bike, and then you got a bigger bike, and then you got a mountain bike.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with the lessons that the Lord teaches us. You go from one level to the next as you level up yourself. when you invest in yourself.
That's exciting to me. I said one time in a conversation, if I'm not learning, I might as well be dead.
Yeah.
And I meant that sort of like it as a joke, but in reality, this is really the thing. We have so many opportunities. We don't have to let our mind sit idle and sort of become inactive like muscles. If you don't, keep active, your muscles start to atrophy. Well, I think our minds can do the same thing. But so anyway, we're excited to help you know that when you invest in yourself, you're going to see changes that you couldn't have even expected. Yeah.
Well, one of the other things that you have to do to activate your gifts that are within you is to activate the power of letting go.
Ooh.
And no, it's not the song Letting Go, Let Go. It's not that. But you have to leave situations that also might be difficult for you to do. You also have to leave friendships and things like that in order to move to the next level. So in my experience, I finished my military commitment and decided that I wanted to join a veteran service organization to continue to make an impact on the world. And so I went at it really hard for 12 years, and it just got to the point where I needed to leave, but I didn't want to leave, and I wasn't going to leave. And so the Lord allowed a situation to disrupt it so that he could redirect me. And while it didn't feel good,
Right.
and that's the part.
It's true.
Things might not feel good, but you have to experience, what you're going through.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be taking that with you to the next season as part of what you've learned.
Right. It really is insightful to have. We came up with this because both of us learned, and like she said, not feeling good and having to let go of things that were what we believed were our passions.
Yes.
And I believe they were, and within the season that we were in, and they prepared us for where we are today. And what we're doing today may prepare us for even more. We don't know that yet, but we're excited about it. So I have kind of a similar situation where I had to make a pretty big job decision. And I had been working with a national organization, and it's where I used my skills in computers, which, like I said, some of these things were new. And back then, you were still doing a lot of using computer programming for how you would develop a document. I know it sounds kind of strange, but you would have to have codes if you wanted to bold something and so forth. So I used those things, and I was good at it. But one day, all of a sudden, I got this impression that God wanted something different of me, and I got a phone call, and it was from someone in my church who was working in a particular ministry that he said, "Have you ever considered working in this ministry?" And before I even could think on what he asked me, my mouth said yes. And I was stunned by myself. But what really happened is I said yes, not knowing that by going into that particular ministry, that if I said yes to the Lord, if I took the risk, and let me tell you, when you're in ministry from a job that's profit-based, where you have all of the benefits, you've got your health insurance, your 401k, lots of vacation, because I'd been there for many, many years, and you going into a nonprofit, the first thing I remember thinking and having to discuss with my husband was, there's no stability in knowing if you're going to be paid, because there's no basic income generation. Right. And so these were risks. And yet, when I said yes to that, what I didn't know is that everything from there propelled me into another ministry work. And today, the podcast, never thought I'd be sitting here. So, you do have to pursue those things. You do have to go back and say, I had to let go of something that could have maybe had a different financial impact in my life, but this is my heart. And so letting go of that was tough.
It can be really, it can be very tough. You're right. And again, letting go of those relationships with certain people that are dragging you down. You might not think that they're dragging you down, but if you really gave it some thought, I mean, we call them what, energy vampires?
Yes.
Because some people, they just drain you. And some people are takers and some people are givers. And so it just makes it difficult. You can't take everybody on the journey with you because they're all not moving at the same pace as you.
And that's a great thing to say. I mean, it really, you should repeat it because it's true. You can't.
Yeah, you can't take everybody with you because they're not moving at the same pace as you. Mm-hmm. And if you continue to hold on to those relationships, then you are not only derailing yourself, but you're derailing the plans that the Lord has for you.
Yeah.
And so when you align your will with God's, it catapults you into an abundant life that He wants for you. And He will do everything in His power to make sure that you can be all that you can be. Yes, I know that's an Army tagline, but
it's a good one, though.
I was in the Army, so I can say it, right?
It's a good one. Be all that you can be.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Nike thing. We can steal those because they're good, but at the same time, I agree with you. You know, if you think about it, what if you knew that you had no limitations on what it is that God would ask you to do? I mean, nothing. Money wasn't an issue, you know, your health or your strength or whatever.
Well, you certainly wouldn't need them.
Right. I mean, that's the part about when you let go of one thing, it opens the door for you to have even greater gifts given into you. Mm-hmm. I think about how I never would have imagined that when I was preparing to say goodbye to the ministry that I'd worked in for 26 years, that God would open a door for me that I thought was going to be my retirement time. And it is, but at the same time, give me purpose in my life. And this is what really makes me excited, is to be able to share with you some of the things on the journey that we're walking through in the hopes that you too will find a way in which you can see that happening in your life.
Well, the greatest part about it is that we put together some notes for you to kind of give you some ideas and a guide to activating your own gift in your life. There will be a download in the description of this podcast so you can get started brainstorming and activate the gifts that God has placed in your life.
That's right. So remember that activating your gift is a continuous process. I mean, it doesn't just happen overnight. You really kind of have to stay adaptable. Mm-hmm. You have to be open to learning new things. And you have to be persistent. That's a key in taking steps towards what God has called you to do. So we're just going to encourage you. That's the part we want to be. That's why we call ourselves Ember Igniters. We want to ignite within you the fire that's there and keep you going.
That's right. Well, that's all for this episode. Our next episode, we are going to explore what to do when your passion is misunderstood. Because it kind of happens, huh?
It does.
But anyway, so be sure to check out Sparks of Wisdom, our devotional series that drops every Tuesday and Thursday. And if this podcast has touched your heart, we want to hear about it.
We do.
Visit our testimonial page on our website to share your story. And we would also be super honored if you would consider joining our community by subscribing to this podcast and sharing it with those around you. You can find us on all major platforms. Mm-hmm. You can also find us on YouTube, Facebook, and as always, our website, sparklightministry.com. Thanks for tuning in. Now go out and set the world on fire.